Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Flagship Podcast. I'm Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry, who apparently has some construction going on at his residence. So he has informed me he's going to be darting in and out of mute mode today. But Eric, we appreciate you fighting through the construction to bring the people what they want, which is your intel, your expertise on these Texas Longhorns. How you doing, my man?
Chip Brown, I am doing well. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge today is March 27th. As you can tell by the sweatshirt here, It is opening day, baby. We're repping the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. I know I am in Rangers/Astros territory. I'm sure Chip Brown is a man. Ernie Harwell was the legendary Tigers announcer, correct?
The roar of 84, baby. That's all we got.
There we go. But no, I'm doing well. As you said, got some construction going on. So I'm going to spend most of my time on mute. So for those of you who listen to this in just strictly audio fashion, are not disturbed by some of the background noise. But those of you watching us live on Twitter, thank you for joining us, watching us live, I guess X, I should say, and watching us live on the Horns247 YouTube page. Thank you. And last thing, we're taping on Thursday. Had a little delay on Wednesday, so apologies. We'll be back to our Wednesday time slot as usual. But yeah, Chip Brown, plenty to get into here around the 40 acres.
Well, and you said, we try to record Wednesday mornings, but we've had a little something going on, like a basketball coaching dismissal and 24-hour search. Spring football is underway. Pro Day happened on Tuesday. The Texas women are preparing for a Sweet 16 showdown with Tennessee on Saturday at 2:30. And baseball continues to roll, taking 2 of 3 from number 2 LSU over the weekend. We will get into all of it. Oh, and Texas softball, by the way, swept Auburn, number 23 Auburn, in the Longhorns' first ever SEC home series. And Tegan Cavan got the win in all 3 games. We will get into all of it. Oh, and number 1 Texas men's swimming and diving is in first place at the NCAA championships after the first day. So dig into your ESPN Plus account and check out some of that swimming, because the finals are in the evening. And we'll even have a thought on that, for crying out loud. But Eric, spring football season never ends. Should we start though with the big news, of Rodney Terry out and Sean Miller in, the Texas basketball situation? And by the way, please like and subscribe the Horns247 YouTube channel. And we do have a 50% off promo going on right now. And for those of you who are already members, feel free to comment, because, we tend to be on top of stuff and get you some scoop during times like coaching searches. And so take advantage. If you're not an annual member at Horns247, jump on this 50% off promo. We've had unbelievable reporting on the basketball situation. Eric's been all over the place covering you name it. And, our recruiting coverage, everything, Hank South, Jordan Scruggs, Will Turboff. It's a great crew, a fun crew. Join the Horns247 family for virtually pennies at this 50% off promo with everything going on. All right, Eric. Rodney Terry, the Rodney Terry era comes to an end, and Chris Del Conte picks Sean Miller, Xavier coach, who beat Texas. We talked about the irony of Rodney Terry and Sean Miller going up against each other again in the NCAA tournament 2 years after they met in the Sweet 16. And this time Sean Miller prevails, and this time Sean Miller is picked as the head basketball coach. Eric, your thoughts?
Yeah, Chip. I mean, listen, you were on top of things. I guess both of us were, but you were on top of things. I mean, given the coaching search, the hire, but also the historical perspective, right? The fact that, for people who wonder why Sean Miller, you can't ignore the past. This is not a name that was just chosen out of the blue. This is someone who Chris Del Conte wanted, right? That's the point that I kind of emphasize, is clearly, whether it is Chris Del Conte and Sean Miller, Chip, I don't know if I'm speaking out of bounds to call it a relationship, right? I guess I'd say an admiration is probably the best way to put it, right? With the two men overlapping in the West Coast. Of course, Sean Miller coached at Arizona. Chris Del Conte has plenty of West Coast ties, of course, being a student athlete at Washington State, and his administrative career as well before making his way to Lone Star State, right? So here there was an admiration from Chris Del Conte towards Sean Miller for the job that he did. And listen, I'll say this, before I get into kind of some of the X's and O's, quote unquote, about it, Chip, one of the things that stood out to me when Chris Del Conte spoke about Sean Miller is you can tell he's 10 toes down. You can tell this is his guy because he went out of the way. Sean Miller's tenure at Arizona was not asked about by the media, Chip, and to bring the audience in here, here's the TLDR. Too long, don't read. Always mix that one up. Here's the Cliff Notes, right? Sean Miller has 50 of his career wins. I believe it's 487, if memory serves me correct. 50 of those wins were vacated by the NCAA because they found that Arizona used an ineligible player. However, in the investigation, Sean Miller was not levied any penalties. This is not just to kind of keep it in the realm of things, right? We're talking about Will Wade. This is not a situation where, Sean Miller was levied a show cause like Will Wade and had any punishments. He was found to, be, I shouldn't say found, but he was absolved of any culpability. It was a Book Richardson, right? Is Richardson the name? I get that last name wrong, the assistant, but I believe it's Book Richardson is the assistant in Arizona who was levied penalties and actually went to jail for a period of time for the situation in Arizona. But Chris Del Conte came out front and said, listen, I did all of the background to this guy and found he was clean. Nothing happened. The reason I mentioned Chris Del Conte being unprompted, Chip, is that just goes to me that CDC is trying to get out in front of everything and say, hey, listen, this is the guy, right? So that spoke volumes to me. Really quick, I'll just add this before I pass it back to you in terms of an X's and O's perspective. I think Texas fans should expect, and I published a piece about this when you reported that Sean Miller would be the hire, that this is going to be a different looking Texas team. Up-tempo, you're going to look to play fast. Xavier played much faster than Texas did this year. And Sean was, he came out and spoke about it unprompted, saying that, hey, 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been the Sean Miller that I am now, right? In terms of being defense first, so on and so forth. But he's seen the evolution of the college game and said, hey, we're going to be an up-tempo team. We're going to play a style of basketball. These are his words. That is going to be exciting for Texas fans to watch, not only on TV, but in person. And the players are going to want to play in. And I think that's what you're going to want to keep an eye on here over the next 10 to 14 days as Sean Miller and company try to assemble his roster, Chip.
Yeah. Yeah. And, college basketball has been, it's been a problem with the shoe companies directing money to AAU coaches and players forever. I mean, this has been going on for decades, and every program has had to deal with it. We've seen John Calipari get smacked around, Rick Pitino, Bill Self, Bruce Pearl. So it's tough to kind of separate. I think where Chris Del Conte has to look into it, he's got to look into it and say, okay, do I get the impression that Sean Miller is all about the program, or is he all about himself? And I think that Sean Miller, having been a head coach for 20 years, now has perspective. We'll see, but I think Chris Del Conte understands that the world of college basketball has had some endemic, systemic issues because the shoe companies for a long time were directing players to the schools that they sponsored. I'll never forget Rick Barnes telling me that he went to Sonny Vaccaro and pleaded to let TJ Ford, because at the time Sonny Vaccaro was with Adidas, to let TJ Ford go to a Nike school. And Sonny Vaccaro basically said, okay. So it's troubling, but we'll see how Sean Miller has grown. You've done excellent reporting on this. Everybody needs to get to Horns247 and read what Eric wrote about Sean Miller, about Chris Del Conte's selection of Sean Miller, which I agree with. I think you in the world of college basketball, it's hard to find a coach who hasn't had to grapple with some touchy issues, if you will. And I do think Sean Miller, who has some history against Texas, he brought up the 2009 team, that the 5-second call. I think Texas basketball fans certainly remember it. That was one of Rick Barnes' most talented teams. Corey Joseph, Tristan Thompson, Jordan Hamilton, and Texas fumbled that game at the end. A 5-second call cost them the game. Arizona moved on, and that was Sean Miller's Arizona team. And then, obviously the Xavier Texas matchup in the Sweet 16. But Sean Miller is a guy who's won everywhere he's been. He was at Xavier initially, then Arizona for 12 years, then back to Xavier, and 20 years as a head coach, 8 first-place finishes, 4 Elite Eights, 8 Sweet 16s. And Eric, you pointed out, Sean Miller's been to 8 Sweet 16s. Texas has been to 12 in the history of its basketball program. So Sean Miller's a guy who knows his way around success, and we'll watch closely to see how he builds the roster. Sounds like he's bringing some Xavier assistant coaches with him, but does he hold a spot for someone with Texas ties? We shall see. I think that would not be a bad idea. I've had several people in the industry say, Sean Miller probably would be wise to have someone with some Texas ties on his staff to help him navigate the landscape, who the players are in terms of the big money guys who will support basketball, all of that. So we will watch closely. And as Eric reported, Devon Pryor, the 6'7" wing, is already in the transfer portal with a do not disturb tag, do not contact, which tells you he probably knows where he wants to go. So the transfer portal is open for basketball. It opened on Monday. So there was urgency for Texas to get its head coaching situation figured out, because now Sean Miller needs to build a roster, for the Texas Longhorns. Any thoughts on the roster, Eric?
Yeah. Before I address the roster, Chris Bennett, as always, appreciate you rocking with us. Yes, that was me in the front of the Sean Miller presser. For anyone ever trying to identify me, it's the head. The head is always very massive and intrusive. Nevertheless,
hopefully people notice the shirt, though, because that shirt is fly. I asked Eric if he was going to the club after the press conference.
I appreciate that, Chip. I got to bring a little flavor. I got to bring a little flavor to the presser. So, no, in terms of the roster, first off, I think you made a great point. Let me backtrack for a second. When you talked about him not completely flipping the staff, yes, Sean Miller's going to need someone. And to bring the audience behind the curtain, Frank Haith was in attendance. Brandon Chappelle was in attendance. Chris Ogden was in attendance there as well. As far as people from the former staff, right? So it would make sense, right? You can't just come in, especially in this tight time crunch, and be like, all right, I'm either going to fill out the entire roster with portal guys and not worry about recruiting, or as I think Sean Miller would like to do, he obviously will hit the portal, but try to make some inroads here. He specifically called out Dallas and Houston as hotbeds. And Chip, you've been in the state, 30 years. You probably can talk about kind of the growth of high school basketball in the state of Texas, right? Because now it feels like you're seeing guys yearly who are, 4-star, 5-star guys out of Texas. So that is crucial, no doubt. But real quick on the roster, yes, Kendall Weaver was in attendance. Sean Miller went out of his way to talk to Kendall as he was on his way out. And Sean Miller, when I asked him in Dayton, when Xavier was taking on Texas, Sean was effusive in his praise of Kendall Weaver, saying every team in the nation would love a player like that. You talked about Devon Pryor. He clearly seems to know where he's going. Our guy, Hank South, another reason to subscribe, Horns247.com, just drops a little nugget that Nick Cody had his meeting with Sean Miller, and that appears to have trended well. So we'll see what the future is there. We asked the question last week, right? How many, in take it or leave it, how many of the remaining players on the roster does Sean Miller need? Players with eligibility does he need to retain, right? The 5 players we listed were Kendall Weaver, Nick Cody, Devon Pryor, Jamie Vincent, and Jordan Pope, right? Still has an opportunity to get 4 of those guys, right? I think Jamie Vincent is still someone you prioritize. 7-footers don't grow on trees. Jamie Vincent may not develop it to be anything, right? However, he was a 3-star recruit, was a top 50 player in the nation, and he's 7 foot tall. All right. So I don't want to let that just walk out the door summarily. Here's a name that we didn't address. And that I got, confirmation from folks in the know that Tremont Mark does indeed have another year of eligibility. I was a little confused because Tremont, when I spoke with him after the game, everything he said, A, he took place and walked in senior day, and B, everything he said in Nashville and in Dayton was my last game. So Tremont does have the option to use that final year. Chip, I'll just say this or pass it back to you. When kind of speculating on Tremont, I think he has an interesting dichotomy, right? Because is he a guy who, after 5 years in college, does he just want to pursue a pro career? That's one aspect. 2, let's just take G League out of it for a second, right? Overseas. Is the money that Tremont Mark that he would make overseas, is that comparable or better to, in theory, what he could get for another year of college basketball in the NIL market? I don't know. I tend to lean that he could probably get something comparable, whether that's with Texas or elsewhere. But who knows? Maybe Tremont is just very dead set on, like, I did 5 years, been banged up, I'm ready to go make some money as a pro and not pursue a grad degree. Who knows? But I think that's an interesting dichotomy as well, Chip.
Yeah. Another name to keep an eye on is Magoon Guath.
Yes.
Who is in the transfer portal from San Diego State. He's 7 feet tall, a little thin at 205, but super long. He's from Euless in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And like I said, was at San Diego State last year, is in the portal, averaged 8.5 points, 5.2 rebounds in his freshman season. So keep an eye on that situation. Eric, anything else before we move on to a little football?
No, I think the only other thing that I would emphasize or think is worth noting here on the pod is, the question I asked Sean Miller at the podium was, hey, and we've talked about this a ton, right? And from your vantage point, how crucial is NIL to fielding a competitive team, and what assurances have you been given from Chris Del Conte that NIL won't be an issue? And Sean Miller did say, hey, it's a combination of 3 things: high school recruiting, international recruiting, and transfer portal. And he feels confident he won't have an issue with that. Chris Del Conte, when I asked him, said, I agree with Sean Miller's answer there. So listen, that to me is going to be the immediate test over the next month or so. Is Texas going to be a player? If they are, then that tells me that things are trending in the right direction. If they're not, then it's going to be a wait and see, and maybe you're talking about trying to piecemeal this roster again. So I just keep my eye on that in the immediate future.
Yeah, and typically what we've seen is when there is a new coach, the money perks up and there's excitement. There's, fans are boosters, I should say, big money boosters are motivated. And so, yes, we absolutely need to keep an eye on that because, Sean Miller made a point. He never recruited a McDonald's All-American to Xavier. He knows he's going to have a different level of athlete that he can recruit to Texas and the resources. Sean Miller said, I don't have any concerns about it. This is the University of Texas. So that's the kind of chatter that the big money guys like to hear, tends to feed their sense of pride and open up their wallets. So let's see how that looks. Eric, it's been a big week for Texas football, no doubt. Spring football started on Tuesday. Pro Day happened on Tuesday. And you and I got a chance to see some of the new faces, the record 22 freshman enrollees, including receivers Michael Terry III, who is a grown man. Jamie French, Kalik Lockett. You got, Elijah Bo Barnes, who looks like he's been in the Texas weight program 2 years already at 246. That guy's put together. And I'll tell you, the guy who probably stood out the most was Nick Brooks, the offensive lineman, 6'7", 353. And, Trevor Goosby's 6'7". Connor Stroh is 6'7", but 353. And it didn't look like there was a lot of flab on Nick Brooks, who was already getting some second team reps at left tackle. It's early. Let's not, I probably shouldn't have made a big deal about that. But clearly, I've been told Nick Brooks was impressive in winter conditioning. You got to keep those large humans coming, right, Eric? You got to have the guys in the trenches protecting everybody.
Listen, this whole thing, we can talk about Arch Manning all we want. This whole thing ain't going to come together if you can't protect him, right? So it's a great point on your part. I'm going to shift away from some of the big humans, go to and Chip, I've never been a big skill position guy. Like I never liked that phrase because it takes a lot of skill to do what the big boys do. But for all intents and purposes, we'll call it the skill position guys here, right? That wide receiver room, Chip, I think it seems to be a topic of conversation. It's been a topic of conversation on our boards, topic of conversation elsewhere, right? Does Texas need to add a veteran out of the portal, so on and so forth? And Chip, I don't know how you feel about this, right? Like, this is probably my group of five experience talking. I've never been a fan of, and I think Steve aligns with this as well. I've never been a fan of just adding a veteran just to say we added a veteran at the spot, right? Because A, if it's going to impede some of the progress of some of your talented younger guys, right, take away reps, then that's a problem. A. B, there's no guarantee that veteran, X is just going to work out, right? Like you have to be, and again, Steve has kind of commented this over the past few years, being selective, being, it's, what does he call it? Speed dating, right? Where you get to kind of, know someone over a course of a few days. So unless there's an A.D. Mitchell or an Isaiah Bond or a Silas Bolden, I don't think it's necessary to just go out and get a veteran. Chip, I like the way Parker Livingstone is put together. And forgive me, I don't have the exact statistic here, but I looked it up. Patrick Turner, remember the old USC receiver Patrick Turner, going back to when Steve Sarkisian was at SC. Parker Livingstone would be the largest starting receiver for Steve Sarkisian going back to Patrick Turner, right? Parker Livingstone, 6'4", about 200. I like the way he's put together, real athletic. You talk about Michael Terry. He is put together. Kalik Lockett, Jamie French. It's early. You can tell they're still kind of work out some of the kinks as far as, timing and things of that nature with your quarterbacks. But these are young talents for a reason, right? Or are their talents for a reason? Let's get through spring ball, see what they have, and then assess if there is a player at a position like wide receiver, like tight end. I thought Jordan Washington, Spencer Shannon, love the way those guys are coming together. They're big, they're put together real well, Let's see how this comes together first before deciding, all right, we need to get a veteran. But I don't think you just go get a veteran for the sake of to say we added a veteran. That to me, Chip, you're impeding the progress of several younger guys who can develop into something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you had a surefire guy who'd done it over 2 years, like Matt Golden at Houston, who, caught 7 touchdown passes in each of his first 2 years in a program. And, Steve Sarkisian knows what he's looking at in terms of receivers. So I'm with you, Eric. Let's see what these guys have got over these 15 spring practices. Steve Sarkisian has it timed up to where spring football is going to finish right about the time the portal closes. So we should know before spring football is over if Texas is making a move because the spring portal for football is April 15th through the 26th. So, or 25th, sorry. It will be revealed in about a month, 3 weeks to a month. So, but I agree. And I'll tell you, Cade Phillips looks good. I mean, a lot of these early enrollee freshmen are impressive. Look at Lance Jackson. That dude looks like, 6'5", 276. He's a true freshman. I'm so impressed with the way some of these guys looked. Hero Canoe. He looks good in pads, and KJ Lacey. Real quick on the quarterbacks, you and I both watched Arch and Trey Owens and KJ Lacey. Arch Manning is going to play the position with fire and passion. He looked really good, but he missed a pass and he let out an expletive you could have heard from Waco. He's a fiery guy, and Trey Owens, man, he's just consistent. The ball comes out, it's on time and on target. And KJ Lacey looks like a Lilliputian standing next to Arch Manning and Trey Owens, because KJ Lacey might be 5'11". I think they list him at 6 feet, but man, he's got like a Michael Vick type zip on his pass. Michael Vick was not a big guy either, but man, could he rocket the football. So that's going to be fun to watch these guys develop, Eric.
Yeah, Chip. No, I just was going to say, I completely agree with you. And especially when looking at KJ Lacey, it's one of those things where your eyes deceive you, because he looks like a little guy out there. And granted, he's not the biggest quarterback in the world, but then you got to remind yourself, he's standing next to guys who are 6'4" and 6'5", actually legit 6'5", in Arch Manning and Trey Owens, right? So that's the only thing there. But no, Chip, I thought the same thing, took the same takeaway. The zip, when that ball comes off his arm, a live arm, baby. That's a live arm. He's got a pitcher's arm. All right. Yeah. So that's definitely something. That QB2 battle between he and Trey Owens will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, for sure. We'll keep you updated. Obviously, spring practice just underway. But pro day on Tuesday, I know all eyes were on Quinn Ewers throwing passes. I think he threw 59 passes. 5 were incomplete. 4 were drops. 1 was an errant throw, but I was told, and his deep ball fluttered a little bit. Okay. I was told Quinn Ewers had a strong performance by one NFL team who was in attendance, and Matt Golden. Those were the first 2 names off of the, who stood out: Quinn Ewers, Matt Golden. So there were, a lot of guys who didn't get the benefit of going to the combine. For those guys, I really, you really want them to have a great pro day. Guys like Silas Bolden, David Benda, Gavin Holmes. Eric, you were there. What stood out to you?
It's Quinn Ewers, man, is such a fascinating figure in college sports. And I'm not going to, go off on too long of a tangent because you asked me about pro day and there's plenty of guys to get to. But Chip, to characterize, I saw some people trying to make Quinn's, like you said, the floater deep balls out to be more than it was. Quinn had a good day in my mind, right? I mean, he had a good day. I don't think Chip, there's a lot of things. If you want to question about Quinn Ewers, you can. I feel like we're past the point in which we should be questioning his ability to throw the football in t-shirt and shorts. That's just my perspective, right? So I thought Quinn had a good day. People, of ones you didn't name, I think Silas Bolden helped himself out, right? Wasn't invited to the combine, but ran real well, jumped high. He showed the athleticism for someone that is his size will need to get a real look at the next level. Thought Jaden Blue, another more solid times with the 40. Thought he really helped himself. So yeah, overall, I mean, more than anything else, Chip, the number of personnel there, right? This to me was just it being broadcast on SEC Network. This was another showcase for Texas football. That was my big takeaway, right? Outside of the guys I named and some people who may have helped themselves, this was another big showcase for Texas football to say, hey, if you're a kid watching, right, and you're a recruit, why would I not want to have my pro day be on SEC Network broadcast live? Why would I not want to have Lewis Riddick and all these other people there, talking about this or attending or so on and so forth? So that was my major takeaway outside of some of the guys. I thought Juan Davis as well, Chip. That's something the guy I should mention. I feel like there's a role in the NFL for a Juan Davis, right? Whether if that's a 4 or 5 year guy as an H-back who's athletic and can be on special teams. Like I thought that's another guy who you got a chance to. This might be a bit of a stretch with the analogy for I pass it back to you, Chip, but Matt Castle, right? Never started a game at SC, but then goes to pro day. You see the live arm, you see the physical traits. It's like, oh, there's something there, right? That's kind of what I took away from Juan Davis, him kind of moving around, flying around, making some grabs as well. So,
yeah. And it's one thing that keeps getting pointed out with Jaden Blue are the 8 1/4 inch hands. That's going to hurt him. That was when that measurement came out, a lot of NFL teams said, okay, there's the fumbling issue. Anything short of 9-inch hands, the NFL tends to overanalyze a player's ability to grip the football. We'll see. That speed is real, and he catches the football and he makes plays. So he's going to get a chance with somebody, and I'm sure he's going to make the most of it with those physical gifts that Jaden Blue has. So, Eric, the Texas women's basketball team gets through the first weekend, handles William and Mary, although Vic was upset with the defense to start that game. William and Mary hit 58% of their shots. It was only a 3-point game after the first quarter. Then Texas started to impose its will, and then they, completely overwhelmed a smaller, scrappy Illinois team that really relies on 6 players because they've had so many injuries this season. But now, Eric, they play Tennessee. Tennessee, that was one of the best games of the year. It was here in Austin in January, and it was a game with 15 lead changes, 15 ties. Texas won it 80-74. Huge games from Madison Booker and Taylor Jones. But Kim Caldwell, the coach of Tennessee, was not even on the sideline for that game because she'd just given birth to her son. And this is a Tennessee team that rolls 5 at a time. I cannot wait for this game. I think it's going to be maybe the best of the Sweet 16 games, Saturday at 2:30. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, Chip, I agree with you. It's interesting, because I remember watching that first meeting, and it was a tight ball game. It was a tight ball game down the stretch. I'm not going to sit here and say Kim Caldwell would have made the difference. Just side note, always admired her. I got a chance to know her a little bit when she was at Marshall prior to Tennessee. So yeah, Kim Caldwell, heck of a coach, as you mentioned. She'd given birth, so she was not on the sideline there. But the thing that stands out to me about this Texas team, and the reason why I am picking them, and I guess I should note this: Tennessee, Chip, does something, and I'm sure you know this. They are very strategic with their substitutions. There's a unique nature in the way they sub that I think teams kind of have to prepare for, as far as the frequency and the timing. That's a little bit unorthodox. Kim Caldwell likes to use her players. That's something that's long been a part of her game plan. But what I was going to say, as far as Texas, the reason why I will pick them to win this game, and the reason why I'm picking them to advance to Tampa in the Final Four, is I cannot find, Chip, a more well-rounded, committed defensive team than you will with this year's Longhorns, and having the size to do so on the defensive end, and then the offensive philosophy of getting the ball down low. Taylor Jones, Kyla Oldacre, Maddie Booker, Rory Harmon is one of the one of the best. I shouldn't short Rory by saying better, one of the best perimeter defensive point guards in the nation. That, to me, I think is going to be just a really interesting thing to watch here, because Chip, we'd be remiss if we didn't note this. USC, Juju Watkins, she's down for the year, right? A knee injury. You just lost one of the top, most dynamic offensive threats in the nation. That gives me all the more reason to like a Texas team that plays the way they do, Chip.
Yeah. And that half of the draw, USC on a collision course. Well, first, Oklahoma takes on UConn. Oklahoma, by the way, which got the commitment from the nation's number one recruit, Aaliyah Chavez, 6-foot point guard extraordinaire, said she picked Oklahoma over Texas because of playing style. We'll see. Chip, Oklahoma is a Jordan brand school.
Jenny Baranchik is going to let Aaliyah Chavez shoot from 25 feet plus, and Vic, the jacket might have been lost immediately the second she did that.
Yeah. But yeah, this game between Texas and Tennessee should be outstanding. And Texas does not shoot the three well. And if you ask Vic Schaefer about it, he will get defensive and tell you that he loves his team's offense, because look, the way that they defend and force turnovers and rebound, they get extra possessions. So, for instance, when they played Tennessee back on January 23rd in Austin, Texas attempted 10 more shots than Tennessee because of that defense. And Texas only made 1 3 in that game. Tennessee has multiple 3-point shooters. So it's going to be a lot of fun, because Tennessee presses full court and Texas presses full court. So this should be a really, really exciting game Saturday at 2:30 on ABC. Eric, anything else on the women before we get to baseball?
Oh, let's roll.
All right. So Texas baseball played LSU over the weekend, and I covered the Friday night game, and LSU's left-handed sophomore pitcher, Cade Anderson, was unbelievable. The guy was borderline unhittable, and he just kind of KO'd the Texas lineup, and LSU was able to get to Texas left-handed Friday night starter Jared Spencer, and LSU won 8-2. It wasn't close. But Schloss, I'll give this to Jim Schlossnagle. He said immediately after the game, he said, the way of life in the SEC is how do you get up and come back the next day? And Texas got up and came back the next day. And they, behind Luke Harrison, the hot bat of Rylan Galvan, and really the hot bat, because remember, the 2, 3, and 4 hitters went 1 for 30 against Mississippi State. And the 2, 3, and 4 hitters since then are batting .433. So, credit to Troy Tulowitzki for getting this team, to shake off whatever woes or slumps, you don't use the S word, but lulls and get those bats going again, because they showed up big time, Eric, in games 2 and 3. And what can you say about freshman Dylan Volantis, the lefty freshman who's now, kind of become Texas's closer? Like, we'll see if he ever starts another Sunday game, because he's been so valuable coming in late innings and pitching extended relief.
Yeah, Chip, I covered that Sunday game, and Dylan Volantis, as you mentioned, did an excellent job out of the pen. It wouldn't shock me if we see Dylan again in the starting rotation, just because, Max Wiener, Schloss, they say they have out-getters, right? Not starters and relievers. And the reason I mentioned that is, who's a guy who had been kind of the middle relief guy for the majority of the year, got to start that day, Ruger Riojas.
Rubber-armed Ruger Riojas.
Rubber-armed Riojas, career high in pitches. Excellent job. He didn't want to give up the ball, Chip. We joked with him post-game. It was clear. He wanted another shot at it, but, it was time to move to Dylan Volantis. But, Chip, to your point, I mean, just out-getters there in the rotation. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this guy, Ethan Mendoza. I think he's doing an excellent job setting the table for this Texas lineup. Getting on. I mean, kid's hitting nearly 400 at this point. And I asked Max Ballou this question. Hey, how great is it to hit behind a guy that you step to the plate, opportunity to get some runs, get a little RBI action? He said there's no doubt it helps him as a hitter to have that guy hitting in front of him. So, yeah, a lot to like. Also, the other thing I guess I'll mention real quick is I asked Jim Schlossnagle post-game Sunday, if this was a measuring stick, kind of a barometer for seeing how good this team is. And he said, hey, it's a measuring stick in the moment, but doesn't believe that's a measuring stick overall, because life in the SEC, as you noted, it's day in, day out, game in, game out, right? Texas will make the trip to, I believe, second to last place Missouri. If memory serves me correctly, they have 9 wins on the season this year. We'll see how they fare. But yeah, a lot to like about this Texas baseball team. The bats, Rylan Galvan, A-Rod, Ethan Mendoza, you're starting to get some Will Gasparino, old steady and reliable Kimball Schuessler. The list goes on, right, Chip? So there you go.
Yeah. And Dylan Volantis, the freshman, 6'6", lefty. The ball is hard to pick up. The Rylan Galvan says it comes out of the sky. He's got a ridiculous 11-5 curve that runs away from left-handed hitters, runs in on right-handed hitters, and his last 6 innings pitched in 4 different appearances, he's given up 3 hits, no runs, and has struck out 7. So I think what he did against LSU came in, is one of the best hitting teams in college baseball, number 3 in the nation in batting average, scoring, you name it, on base percentage. And Dylan Volantis, he just shut him down. As we mentioned, Texas softball, Tegan Cavan, good heavens. Mike White said Auburn couldn't hit her, so he just kept putting her out there. She started Friday's game and Sunday's game. Those were both run rule victories. And then Texas needed a walk-off. They were down to Auburn 5-4 going into the bottom of the 7th. And Katie Stewart, the hard-hitting sophomore outfielder, hits a 3-run home run walk-off to win it 7-5 in the bottom of the 7th. So Tegan Cavan now 13-1. She pitched the final 2 innings of game 2 and started and won Friday and Sunday. She's on fire. And Texas softball will take on Mississippi State in Starkville, number 18 Mississippi State, this weekend. Eric, you ready for a little take it or leave it?
Chip, I'm always ready for America's favorite game. Take it or leave it.
Well, then let's do it. Let's get to a little take it or leave it here on, the Flagship Podcast. All right, who's serving first?
Chip Brown, you are serving to me, so I will get us queued up here. Here we are.
Okay. Eric, Ryan Wingo, who's now wearing number 1, kids. He has changed from number 5 to number 1. Ryan Wingo will lead the team in receiving yards in 2025. Take it or leave it.
Chip, before I answer that, we actually got a little moment, so I'll ask you a random question. Your thoughts on players wearing the number 1? Are you a fan, not a fan?
I mean, I think it says, I'm here. I'm the man. So you better be bringing it if you're wearing number 1. You know what I'm saying? And now, we know Ryan Wingo got some LASIK surgery. His eyeballs are on point. So I guess he's feeling super confident. What do you think?
I've always been a fan of the number 1 on players. I asked because I attended a university, and you can do your research here. That
in the state of Florida.
In the state of Florida, that a coach famously said that he would not issue the number 1 to any player because no one player is above the team. It's an old school relic. I will let you do the deep dive into who that was the years I attended said school. But back to America's favorite game, take it or leave it.
George O'Leary?
You're correct. George O'Leary was the coach who said that. Ryan Wingo will lead the team in receiving yards. I am taking it. Love Demo. I love what Demo does as a blocker. I'll be interested to see. I expect him to again work out of the slot. Be curious to see how that, if that does end up being the case. No reason to believe that won't be the case. But no, I think Wingo is ready for a breakout here. I think he will lead the team in receiving yards. Chip.
All right, I agree with you. So I will take that as well. Take it or leave it, number 2.
Take it or leave it, number 2. Chip Brown, Texas women's hoops must win the rebounding battle against Tennessee to advance to the Elite 8. Take it or leave it.
You know what? I'm going to take this, Eric, because we were just talking about the defensive prowess, the ability to turn people over. Texas needs to get extra possessions because they don't shoot the 3 very well. So they need to, collect as many 2-point opportunities as possible. And in their first meeting, Texas out-rebounded Tennessee 49-34. And they only won by 4. So I'm going to say, yes, I'm taking this. Eric, what do you say?
Chip, I am going to answer that in 1 second. Again, I want to get our viewers involved here because I'm sure you'll have a take on this real quick. Jose Rodriguez, and we're talking about numbers, says maybe he's a bit old man, but was it premature by Texas to retire primetime numbers like 12, 10, and 34? Chip, there's some legendary Longhorns who wore those numbers. Was that premature?
This is a tough one. The Cowboys don't retire. Well, that's not true. No one's ever worn 12 and no one's ever worn 8, but somehow Tony Dorsett's number 33 is out there. So is Emmitt Smith's 22. Come on, Jera. I have mixed feelings. Like, I sure didn't think Kobe deserved 2 jersey numbers retired with. Come on. Let's not take 2 numbers out of circulation with the Lakers, but I don't know.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What do you think?
No, I was just curious. I mean, I think at Texas, when you have players who had such an impact with those numbers, it's not like we're just, like, all right, you made a couple, all conference teams, right? I mean, even I, being the non-Texan, non-UT grad, know the players who wore those numbers. So I don't think it was premature, but I do understand Jose's sentiment. All right. Just figured, we got a few minutes to spare, so I'll try to work in a few audience questions here. Back to take it or leave it. Yes, Chip, they do need to win the rebounding battle. I'm not saying this to be a skeptic, but we do know at times, Chip, Texas can get off to somewhat slow starts from the field, right? In the event that they do, they're going to need to win the rebounding battle, specifically the offensive rebounding battle. Kyla Oldacre, get those second chance points. I think those will be crucial in this game, especially if Texas doesn't get out to a quick start from the field, Chip.
Yeah. And Vic keeps hinting that he's going to play Kyla Oldacre and Taylor Jones together. I don't know if this is the game or not, but that's a formidable front court for sure. Okay. Take it or leave it. Number 3, Eric, Bob Bowman, the first-year head coach of the number 1 Texas men's swimming. He's the swim coach. Matt Scoggin is the diving coach. Want to give Matt Scoggin his love because Matt Scoggin has a bunch of national titles with Eddie Reese in this program. But Bob Bowman will lead number 1 Texas to the national title 1 year after winning it all at Arizona State. Take it or leave it.
Chip, I'm going to take it. Just because Bob Bowman's been a hell of a coach, right? What a replacement for Eddie Reese, right? So, I think you have that aspect. The standard is the standard. Chris Del Conte has laid out what the standard is. He wants national titles. I just think that would be a nice story there, do it back-to-back years with different programs. So I am taking this, Chip.
Hey, I'm going to take it too. Here's the thing. It's weird. And I was quickly trying to look this up because Texas and Cal have this ridiculous kind of rotation that Cal wins the national title like almost every other year than Texas. And, Texas won 3 in a row from 16 to 18. Then Cal won it in 19. Texas won it in 21 because COVID canceled the meet in 20. Cal won it in 22. And then Cal won it in 23 and Arizona State won it last year. But I'm taking this. Let's go. Bob Bowman. Come on. All right, kids. There you have it. Don't forget, you can watch that NCAA swimming championship on ESPN Plus, I believe. So look around in your ESPN Plus for swimming. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of the Flagship Podcast. Please like and subscribe the Horns247 YouTube channel, and feel free to give us a 5-star rating if you're a loyal listener and you find us enjoyable. That would help us with our bosses wherever you listen to your podcast. And don't forget to jump in on the 50% off promo to become an annual member at horns247.com. That is the best way to become a member. If you're month to month, you don't get VIP access to all the team sites on the preeminent 24/7 sports network. If you're an annual member, you do. So for 50% off, we're talking pennies here. Head over to horns247.com. That's where Eric and I will be. Until next time, stay safe and keep the faith.